Hello and welcome back to another Casual 60 deck design. This is kind of a deck that I've always enjoyed, the Clockwork creatures. It is a Clockwork themed deck. Sadly, I don't get a chance to play this very often. This is one of those middle ground decks where I can usually play it against newer players who are slowly progressing to becoming better players, where they get a better understanding of the game. I can't really play it against very new players because it's it's not a bad deck, but it's also not a quick deck. I can't really play it against a lot of new or stronger players because they see some of the cards in the deck and they think I am misappropriating resources. Like the deck itself is thematic, but to make it function correctly, I put a lot of fun stuff in here that's kind of awkward. So it's kind of a really niche play group I can actually play this against, so I don't get a chance to play it very often. But it's a very fun deck. I've always been a fan of the Clockwork creatures, the older original ones that got 0-1 counters or 1-0 counters. So when the mirrodin block came out, I was thrilled. I ended up starting collecting these out of nowhere, and eventually I just made a deck. This is a Grixis deck. It is thematic in a couple of ways, so you'll see. We'll start with the creatures here. The deck is full foil. I've been working on this for a while. Actually, it was completed a couple years ago. And when the Mirrodin Besiege came out, I was able to update it with a couple more toys as well. So it's actually been essentially as is, with just very slight improvements over the years here. But we're starting with the cheapies. The Clockwork Beetle is kind of your standard Clockwork guy. 1 for a 2/2. He comes in with 2 counters, that is. But when he attacks or blocks, I pluck them off. Don't really want to do too much with him early game. He's there just to kind of ward off jump blockers, so we've got a play set there. In a Clockwork deck or an artifact deck with counters, you would expect to see this guy. He is one of the stronger cards in the deck, just a 2 for 1/1, but I can tap to put +1/+1 on all artifacts I control. And all creatures in the deck are artifacts. So we've got a play set to them. It's actually probably the better creature out of all of these here. Going on with the Clockwork theme, we have the Condor. It's a 4 for a 3/3 flyer. The 3 counters it is that, of course. So don't have too many of them since, well, I guess we have a set. The ones that are actually proactive to the deck, they tap to add counters so they can get bigger. So that would be the Vorak. There's another one back here. And the Hydra, which can also just tap to put counters. Both of these are 5 for essentially a 4/4. The Vorak comes in with 4 and he has trample. The Hydra comes in with 4. Technically the Vorak is better since they both cost the same, but I like the Hydra because that artwork is actually pretty cool. And finally the big one is the Dragon. Instead of tapping, I can just pay 3. But of course a gigantic 5/5 or a 6/6, I'm sorry, 6/6 flyer is pretty good. So let's just pass on these. The cool thing in the deck is I can do a couple things. Like I put a couple things in here to try and play around with the artifacts the best I can. The Clockwork creatures on their own, without the Overseer especially, are just subpar. They are typically vanilla creatures with very small abilities. They get smaller if I attack or block. So I have to have a lot of ways of making them actually good, essentially winding them up or charging them correctly. This lets me flash things in. The cool one, this one untaps all artifacts on essentially everyone's upkeep. So it's kind of like the Seedborn Muse effect. And the artifacts that tap, like the Overseer or the Vorak, I can make them pretty big if every upkeep I get a chance to. So I got a couple of these out here. That's a very big part of the deck. Even the lands themselves are artifacts, so I can untap and do more. This one gets me in some trouble here. I have been in a financial pickle. I used to run 3 of these in the deck. I've ended up selling a couple of them. This is the only one left. This is essentially just another free land. A Metalcraft is almost always active in the deck. So really good ramp, but I am playing a 3-color deck. You'll see why coming up. So I'm running 2 of these chromatic lanterns to help fix the colors. The deck is Grixis colors. So I actually am running a few of the proliferate spells. There's more in the sideboard I'll show. Sideboard is like a collection of cards, not 15, but the Gambit is our only main draw spell in here because it lets me proliferate and draw. So the creatures all get bigger. And here's the star of the deck, past the creatures. Mishra, however you pronounce it. He's been rendered in a few different cards in the games like the Battle Masters or whatever the Xbox game was. I've always enjoyed this particular one because he looks so wildly different. It's like young Mishra or whatever, before he got kind of corrupted and whatnot. He's a very powerful card in artifacts. Strange and hard to play out in casual decks, and competitive decks even more, but in casual decks you usually see him because he's just interesting. He is a 4 mana costing legendary creature. That's a 4/4, so 1 blue, black, red. His ability is whenever I cast an artifact spell, before it resolves, that is, I get to search my graveyard hand or library for a duplicate and put straight into play. There's actually a really clever EDH deck design out where I saw someone running Mishra with the Possibility Storm and the enchantment from Legends that auto counters things unless you pay 3, so you can kind of get a pseudo lock out there, and it's pretty clever. But so yeah, the deck's kind of built with him in intention, so I can get really good value of the artifacts. The newest addition to the deck, although, is Tezzeret. Again, this is another card I don't like showing him off too much to the more competitive play groups because they think I'm just really wasting a card in a deck that's not very strong. But Tezzeret here, he's an exceptional card. Like, I've seen a lot of newer legacy decks where they're utilizing like Tezzeret Control, where they play the soul lands like the Ancient Tombs and whatnot, drop a Chalice to counter all 1 converted mana cost, and then they play the 2 mana rocks. And his value is fantastic, just the draw, and he himself is a win condition. This deck isn't excessively strong on its own. Like, for example, in Standard, you can usually tell who has the board advantage around turn 5. Legacy and Modern a lot earlier. Without Tezzeret, this deck would probably be around turn 10-ish. But he himself is such a powerful win condition that I wanted to put a pair of them in there. Probably should be playing more just to make the deck more consistent and strong, but again, this is a casual deck, so I'm not really wanting to go out and just rape someone. 3-color deck, granted most of it is colorless. Mishra is important, so I do need to fix the lands. So I am running the Necropolis. I don't like these because they come into play tapped, but again, a 3-color deck, the option of dropping him as fast as possible is great. Glimmer Void is a fantastic land as long as you have artifacts. But since the rest of these lands are all artifacts, Glimmer Void actually fits perfectly. Because then I have the artifact lands. Again, these I'm only running Darksteel in here. For the Metalcraft from, well, I only have 1 of the Moxes left. But also for the Metalcraft off of the Glimmer Void. And also to help with Tezzeret. These were not originally in the deck until I think Tezzeret actually came out. That's when they decided to make the cut. But the rest of these are all just the artifact lands. This is a very fun deck to play. It's not like ultra competitive. I'm not going to go out and just like rip someone's face off with Tezzy. The Clockwork creatures make it very thematic and fun, and it's always interesting because literally if the unwinding clock's out, it's kind of like the deck is untapping. It's mechanical. It's very fun to play. I do have a giant stack of cards where I've been making cuts recently, or a slight collection. Again, this deck has been around in my... Essentially, I've been running the deck since the original Clockwork creatures in Mirrodin. There were Clockwork creatures before then. I didn't have anything functioning with them. Like, the first deck I built was Clockwork creatures and the modular creatures, and it wasn't very strong. And this is still not very strong, but it's a lot stronger than what it used to be. So we have an extra Mishra and an extra Clockwork Dragon and the extra Necropolis. Since I am running Grixis, I could do more Proliferate. I don't have any removal in the deck because, again, it's not tiered to a competitive build or a group of friends who can deal with it. So there's no real need because usually my creatures are pretty beefy. But Volchard is an option, as is Grim Affliction. More removal, well, somewhat removal, and also the Proliferate is really good. There's an extra Voldalkin and an extra Lanterns. Here's some of the older creatures. I actually used to run Workhorse as a playset in here because he comes in with counters and he is mana. The reason he got cut is because the 6, and he's not really a Clockwork. He's pretty clever. Another card I used to play with in here was called Temporal Aperture. It's a really goofy card just to try and get some advantage. It's 2 to drop. You can't really activate it until you have 5, though. You essentially tap and shuffle your deck and reveal the top card, and then until end of turn I can play that card. So these used to be in there. This is actually a newer card that I was thinking about actually putting in the deck because he's very clockworky, like per theme. I preferred the Clockwork creatures themselves, so I didn't end up investing too many of these guys. And there's the older Clockwork guys. The original Clockworks all came with +1/+0 counters. And they could not exceed their original set, so I couldn't grow them very big. So there's a flying one. I prefer this artwork on the beast. Like, there's the original beast, but I always like this artwork better. The steed. Again, I really wish these had black borders because I like this artwork far more than this. And the swarm. Magnetic web was another goofy card I've been goofing around with. It's situational. I think last time I actually played with this, I was playing Chromium and EDH, and I was trying to capitalize on Rampage. I don't really remember why this was in the deck, but for some reason I was playing with it. This guy was given to me. I don't know. Like, I'm a foil whore amongst my friends, so if there's any random foil, someone would probably give it to me. It does kind of fit, but I would prefer to have the unwinding clock to this. Same card actually, just got reprinted. And also I used to do a lot more in this deck for proliferating. When proliferate was first a mechanic, it took a pretty big change. But I ended up going straight back to a Mishra build, so that used to be in here as well. But that is the Clockwork deck. Again, this is something I really thoroughly enjoy this deck. The problem with it again is the play group. My play groups are broken down to essentially super competitive people, and all they want to do is play standard or a competitive deck. They don't play casual anymore, or if at all. Then I have like really new friends who are just getting into Magic, or they only invest into like a fat pack and they build, and their entire collection is from that or what I've given them. And then there's the range of people in between. So while this is a very fun and beautiful deck and thematic to play, it doesn't fit. It's not good to play it against a lot of my groups. So it doesn't need to see a lot. For example, last time I actually did play this, it was at my local shop, and it was right after one of the Ravnica sets came out. One of the kids I was playing with, he saw, I was like, well, I'm playing an all artifact deck. Like, there's like maybe 10 cards in here or less that are not artifacts. And he decided to go get a pile of, what's it called? Merciless Eviction? Yeah. And that was for a casual game. Yeah. Something like that's just kind of obnoxious. That kind of gives you a heads up of what what I'm exposed to when it comes to different play styles. So something like that, like people who will change their decks based upon what they're about to play against are a little strange. I try not to play against those people anyway. So, but yeah, this is a Clockwork deck. There's a lot of really great artwork that came out with the conspiracy cards. A lot of really Clockwork themed cards. Sadly, those are the conspiracy cards themselves. There's nothing that really fits this theme that's been printed recently. But again, I've kept this thing functional since essentially the first mirrodin block came out, because like as soon as these guys got printed, the Clockwork dudes, not this overseer, but as soon as these guys started getting printed, I fell in love with them, and I've kept them essentially some kind of deck functional with them since then. The modular has fallen off. Proliferate is kind of shrunken down a little bit, but these guys, I like them. I'll probably always keep them. But I hope you enjoyed this deck. If you have any ideas, definitely let me know. I'll be posting some more casual decks here in just a few seconds.